the audience by gay and lesbian veteran and service members, one of whom joins us presently, Mr. Obama took pains to recall that gay soldiers have fought for America since before there was an America.
There can be little doubt. There were gay soldiers who fought for American independence, who consecrated the ground at Gettysburg, who manned the trenches along the Western Front, who stormed the beaches of Iwo Jima. Their names are etched into the walls of our memorials. Their headstones dot the grounds at Arlington.
In fact, it was under General George Washington on March 10th, 1778, that Lieutenant Frederick Gotthold Enslin was tried by a court-martial for sodomy. First known gay person to serve in the U.S. military, but not, Mr. Obama repeatedly emphasized, the last. A gay veteran of the Korean War joins us presently. Mr. Obama related the story of one who served in World War II.
During the firefight, a private named Lloyd Corwin tumbled 40 feet down the deep side of a ravine. And dazed and trapped, he was as good as dead. But one soldier, a friend, turned back. And with shells landing around him, amid smoke and chaos and the screams of wounded men, this soldier, this friend, scaled down the icy slope, risking his own life to bring Private Corwin to safer ground. And for the rest of his years, Lloyd credited this soldier, this friend, named Andy Lee, with saving his life, knowing he would never have made it out alone. It was a full 4 decades after the war, when the two friends reunited in their golden years, that Lloyd learned that the man who saved his life, his friend Andy, was gay. He had no idea. And he didn't much care. Lloyd knew what mattered. He knew what had kept him alive, what made it possible for him to come home and start a family and live the rest of his life. It was his friend. And Lloyd's son is with us today. And he knew that valor and sacrifice are no more limited by sexual orientation than they are by race, or by gender, or by religion, or by creed. That what made it possible for him to survive the battlefields of Europe is the reason that we are here today. That's the reason we are here today.
The president encouraged gay Americans to enlist, encouraged the 14,000 plus discharged under Don't Ask, Don't Tell to return, and spoke specifically to the current generation of gay service members, the last generation to serve in fear.
As the first generation to serve openly in our armed forces, you will stand for all those who came before you. And you will serve as role models to all who come after. And I know that you will fulfill this responsibility with integrity and honor, just as you have every other mission with which you've been charged. And you need to look no further than the servicemen and women in this room. Distinguished officers, like former Navy Commander Zoe Dunning. Marines like Eric Alva, one of the first Americans to be injured in Iraq. Leaders like Captain Jonathan Hopkins, who led a platoon into northern Iraq during the initial invasion, quelling an ethnic riot, earning a Bronze Star with valor. He was he was discharged only to receive emails and letters from his soldiers saying they'd known he was gay all along and thought that he was the best commander they ever had.
Ultimately, the president said repealing Don't Ask, Don't Tell was an act of promises. His promise to those who serve and the promise of the nation they serve.
A young woman in uniform was shaking my hand, and other people were grabbing and taking pictures. And she pulled me into a hug, and she whispered in my ear, "Get Don't Ask, Don't Tell done." And I said to her, "I promise you I will. For we are not a nation that says, don't ask, don't tell. We are a nation that says, out of many, we are one. We are a nation that welcomes the service of every patriot. We are a nation that believes that all men and women are created equal. Those are the ideals that generations have fought for. Those are the ideals that we uphold today. And now it is my honor to sign this bill into law."
With us tonight on this historic occasion are historian Manning Marable, director of the Center for Contemporary Black History at Columbia University. Also, fresh from the signing ceremony today, the only person to serve openly after winning her court battle against Don't Ask, Don't Tell, now retired U.S. Navy Commander Zoe Dunning. And Garrison Phillips, who served his country in the closet and saw combat as a private in the 5th Army Regiment in the Korean War. He's now a blogger for seniorplanet.org. Thank you all for joining us tonight. I really appreciate it.
Thank you.
Mr. Phillips, I'd like to start with you. Having gone through the experience in Korea of serving in the U.S. Armed Forces and not being able to be honest about who you were with the men you served with, what was going through your mind today as you watched the bill signing?
At first, almost disbelief, and of course, great joy, and as though somebody had just taken a big load off of my shoulders. And, to finally be able to be open about serving my country, to stop lying, which is against every principle we're taught as children by our parents, by churches, by schools. Yet gays and lesbians do this all the time. And it ain't easy. And it was wonderful.
Commander Dunning, you were in the room today and you got to experience that moment. What was it like in that room? I know that usually the White House does these signings in the Oval Office or a small room in the White House, but it looked like they had the biggest auditorium they could find in Washington today.
Well, the energy was electric for sure. I mean, there were hundreds of people there, many of them longtime advocates for repeal, many service members in the audience, many staffers who served on the Senate and congressional offices that helped push this through. And so it was like a victory party in many ways. And the energy was absolutely wonderful. And the president seemed relaxed, joyous, and proud.
Professor Marable, I want to get a sense of you of the sort of significance of this in the long sweep of social progress in this country. People have called this one of the most significant pieces of civil rights legislation in decades, and I know it's hard sometimes to sort of figure out the analogy of the civil rights struggle of against segregation, particularly, is so iconic. Sometimes those analogies can seem very fraught, but this seems like a place where it might be warranted. I wonder what you think.
I think clearly this is a day that is not unlike the momentous occasions where we March on Washington in August 1963, or the signing of the Voting Rights Act of 1965, because we have broken yet another barrier that restricts the boundaries of democracy. And that's why there was such joyous celebration that occurred in Washington, D.C. and all over the country, because this step was long overdue.
One of the things that was interesting, just to stay with this for 1 second, is that there was an interesting dynamic between the White House and groups that were advocating on this. There was a lot of tension, there was a lot of conflict. Advocates were not quiet, they were noisy, they were chaining themselves to the fence, and people felt like maybe the White House was slow-walking this, and in the end, they both seemed sort of borne out, because there was a kind of productive tension. I wonder, in historical context, is that the kind of thing you generally see from the successful social movements?
Absolutely. I think that what this occasion reminded me today of the sacrifices and the struggles of a